Hello YouTube and welcome to Old Maryland 63 C10. This is episode 13, and in this episode we're going to be putting the rear suspension back underneath the truck. So stay tuned. Okay, getting ready to head to the machine shop to get the rear set up. So I got the rear, the trailing arms. Like I said, I'm bringing the trailing arms with me to press the bushings in. They're not going to be too hard to push in, but I figured they got to press, so why not use it? And then I got a box of my old parts so that we can press the bearing off the input shaft to see what kind of shims are behind it. And then we have our gear set, our assembly kit. That's my axles I bought, Eaton posi, and then a box of stuff I'm going to do some glass beating on. And then I got the A-arms over there because, again, same thing. I'm going to use their press to press in my ball joints since I'm heading that way. So we're going there next. Okay, so we're getting ready to pull into the machine shop, and I have to say, every time I make this turn, the few times I'm down here, it makes me feel like I'm back in college. This is the machine shop I worked at college to help get me through college, and when I first started teaching, I worked here during the summers and again during the school year at times to help ends meet. And these guys were always great to me, working on my Camaro project back in the day. They would help me with just about anything I needed. Most of the guys have moved on, but there's a few of them that are still here, and the shop looks very similar to what it did all those years ago. So always love pulling down here because I know I'm gonna have a good day. This is where I tested my, or I should say dynoed my small block for the truck, which you'll find out more about that later too. So we're getting ready to work on the rear. Okay, so the first step is going back with the trailing arms first. They were the last thing to come off, so they're first thing to go back on. So I'm going to be as careful as I can when I'm putting these in, so I don't want to scratch them up too bad. When we go to put them into the slots, we're going to put a little bit, just a little dab of grease on the inside of the bushing. Pretty sure should have a little bit in there. Again, not much. And these bolts were actually one of the only sets of bolts that I was able to salvage from taking the rear end apart. If you watch that video, I had a heck of a time getting most of those bolts out. And these were only a couple that I was able to save. There we go. Okay, now these are supposed to be torqued to 140 foot-pounds, but I did also read that they're supposed to be torqued when all the weight is on the truck. So we're going to just tighten these down a little bit, not going to make them too tight, and then come back when the weight's on the truck and then torque them down to their final torque. So all this is going to be finger tight for now. Put a wrench on it just to kind of snug it up. But we'll just get them snug now so that we can keep moving forward. Springs are next, and we just got to make sure that we get the spring to seat in this pocket for this cup to be able to hold them on. So just got to make sure they're all going in the right direction. So we'll go ahead and get the springs on, and then we'll sit the axle in. Springs gave me a little bit more of a fit than I thought. Trying to get them clocked right with the cups. They look like they're seated pretty good now, but they were giving a little bit of a fight. So let's see if we can wheel the rear underneath of it and set it up on the trailing arms. Whoops. Well, that ain't gonna work because it's gonna put the frame down. Okay, gotta figure out something for putting some weight on the front of the frame. Be right back. Okay, take two. Just had to move the stands back here because I had them up a little bit further on the stand with nothing in the front. The frame was tipping over. So let's go ahead and sit it up onto the trailing arms. So the U-bolts I bought, they're a little spread out, so they don't quite fit down in the axle. So I got to use one of my clamps here to kind of pinch them in a little bit to be able to get them to fit a little better, to go down through the rear and the cross member. They just didn't want to slide in. Hopefully a little tap. Now that they're started, I'm gonna have to just persuade them the rest of the way in, but hate to do this to my new paint. There we go. Okay, and these I think are supposed to get about 140 foot-pounds of torque as well, but just like with the front control arm bushings, I'm going to tighten everything up, but I'm going to wait until all the weight's down on the truck before I actually tighten these down or torque them down. Okay, it's the other side, same way. Tell you, I really envy these guys that have trucks that have perfect paint, because it seems like every time you do something you get a little scuff here or there. I guess that's just part of it. Yeah, this is just a snug. Okay, so next we're going to go ahead and install the panhard bar. If you remember last time, the top bolt here had to be cut off. This one was not having it. So I went out and bought new bolts. The ones I got were a little bit longer because the ones I was able to find, the grade 8s I was able to find, more of the thread of the bolt was on the bushing. And I wanted more of the, I guess essentially the shank. So we'll see. Hopefully that won't be a problem. Same as everything else, it's just going to get snugged up, because these will get a torque too once everything gets, all the weight gets on the truck, and also the adjustment of the rear. I'll get it close, but when all the weight's on the truck, that's when you actually set the rear in the center of the truck. So this is just temporary as well. Okay, snugged up, so let's put the shocks on. So each one of these red bushings needed to be trimmed back a little bit to fit inside of the brackets. So between my tile knife and I actually used my bandsaw to just shave a little bit off of each side. And the bottom metal sleeve that goes inside of the bracket also had to be ground down a little bit to fit in the bottom one. So they didn't quite just drop right in. So I had to do a little bit of work on that. So hopefully this one will now fit. We'll see here. Okay, so it turns out in this kit, all the sleeves that go inside the shocks have different sizes. And while I found 2 of them that basically fit inside the brackets, one of them's inside diameter was slightly smaller and wouldn't fit the bolt. So I had to take it out. I had to cut down one of the other sleeves that has basically the same ID as my top one to then fit in the bottom one. So I'll try this again. And she's in. Okay, let's tighten these down and do the other side. So now we're ready to do the rear brakes. I went ahead and reinstalled this stud at the top here that I'd pulled out so that we could powder coat the rear, painted that up, got that back in. Already put the wheel cylinder back in, and I did pull one of them apart, and they are brand new. They're, got a nice hone on the inside. All the rubber on the inside is really solid. So I think, again, they were something along with the shoes and the drums that the previous owner had replaced. So let's go ahead and get the brakes on. Now, I will say up front that I know there is a bunch of different ways of putting brake shoes on. I'm not an expert on it. So we're going to see if we can get through this without too much of a hassle. And again, I know there's a specific pattern that makes it easier, but I don't always remember it. The other thing I already put in is I did buy new emergency brake cables. They came from Inline Tube. They're stainless steel, so we'll get that hooked up as well. Okay? So the way I do it is I go ahead and put the adjuster in the bottom and the adjuster spring. Another thing of note, I didn't update these to the 64 and up rear end, which gives you the self-adjuster. So I'm sticking with the way they were in 63. So it's just a manual adjuster every time if your brakes need adjusting, you got to do it by spinning the wheel. The lower spring holds it in. It doesn't have the self-adjuster like in the later ones. And I'm going to stay with that because it's what we already have. So I put the spring in to kind of help hold the shoes together. I take one of the pins and go ahead and slip this in for the back shoe. Try to hold it all together while putting the emergency brake cable in. There it goes. Okay. Okay, so we got the rear pin in, got the shoe in the wheel cylinder. Need to get this one back around front. In like that. And I go ahead and put the back spring on to hold the back of the back shoes on. And now I'll put the pin in the back, but I won't put this on yet because I've got to get the bracket in there for the emergency brake cable. Okay, so that's just sitting in there. This is the emergency brake bracket and goes back here. It helps make the emergency brake work. And then this just gets on the front here. Oh, I couldn't have done that if I tried. Okay, so let's go ahead and put this pin in. Okay, then let's get this last spring in here. And we'll see how it all fits. Okay. Okay. Get the drum on. That's still in the right place. Okay, so we need to adjust that up. But we'll get that adjusted, get the emergency brake bolted to the frame, and be done with the brakes. Okay, so we got the brakes on, got the emergency brake cable attached to the frame and attached up at the front where the bracket is that brings them both together and eventually runs up to the cab. Again, I'm sticking with the 63 route. I know a lot of people switch to the later 66 version, but again, I'm going to stick with what was here with the truck. I know it needs adjustment. And that'll pretty much take care of everything on the back half of the frame. I'm gonna wait to do the brake lines until I get the front done. In case I'm bending and just kind of manipulating brake lines. Just want to do that all at one time instead of piecemeal with the back and then doing the front. So again, if you're getting something out of these videos, please like and subscribe. The more subscribers we have and the more likes, kind of gets the video around a little bit more. So just a note, I put out a short on how I cleaned the hardware for the frame. I showed just the 4 I did on the brake cylinders, but I did the same process for all the parts that I had in the back because I don't have a blaster here, so I did a vinegar bath and some other things. I used Eastwood chassis primer, and then I used the Eastwood Extreme Chassis Black, the semi-gloss. Seems to work fine, covered really well, no complaints yet. Of course, obviously time will tell the longer the truck's on the. I use their pre-painting prep also to clean the hardware, a little bit of acetone here and there to get things ready for the paint. Again, products seem to work fine. I'm not affiliated with Eastwood. They're not sponsoring the video, but I am going to include a link in the description below. If you wanted to buy these paints, if you use my link, it'll help me out a little bit with the channel. So that'll pretty much wrap up this one. Our next video is going to be putting the front suspension on, and I look forward to seeing you then. So thanks for watching.